I still have self-doubt every day. I still have fear every day. The difference between people who succeed and they don't is they just step into that fear and they walk through the door.
All right. Hey, friends. Welcome to the BK Strength Show. This is the inaugural episode. And if you're watching this or listening to this episode, then I want you to know this is taking place in my private gym in Chino Hills, California, BK Strength. And we decided to do the show out of BK Strength for one reason, because this is a place where you build your body, build your resilience, and no better place to record an episode and a show where you're going to build your mindset, your emotional resilience, and become stronger mentally, physically, and emotionally. And figured no better way to start this than my dear friend, truly a brother from another mother, Jay Ferruggia. Now, if you don't know of Jay Ferruggia, one, you're sleeping under a rock. Two, he is literally the world's best strength coach, period, bar none. And he is the host of the Renegade radio show, which is an amazing show. I've had the good privilege to be on it. My friend Craig Ballantyne's been on it, and the way the man entertains and teaches and interviews is amazing. And so I'm grateful that you're here, Jay. Welcome,
Thank
brother.
you so much. It was
Yes, sir.
the greatest introduction of all time.
Well, I've been rehearsing that. But truly, man, this is the first episode, and like I said, who better to do it with than you, because you are one of the few people on this planet that make me feel very at ease and comfortable. Those who don't know should know that you're the one, you were the first person that I've gone to a concert with in this country, tailgated with the first time. My first Super Bowl party.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of firsts.
Yeah. So you're a lot of firsts.
Yeah.
Man. You're a lot of firsts. But the reason we're here is because I truly believe like you have had more transformational moments in your life in the period that I've known you now, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years, than probably anyone else that I know. Like, and you've been kind enough to open up to me in the past about how angry you were, how intense you were. And I thought, who better to talk to and really talk about these, like how you get past your childhood terrors and your fears to become the world's best strength coach and a host of a show that is heard by so many and has impacted so many people like myself. So why don't we start there? Why don't we start about your journey? Tell us there. Where did you start?
Yeah. So as a kid, I was painfully shy and insecure. Physically small, kind of chubby kid, not the greatest athlete. And what I remember most about childhood, which is kind of sad and dark, but are two things. One, my mom and dad screaming and fighting like animals every single day, every single night. And then I would get woken up and I was behind my bedroom door and my dad would come home late like he did every night. And he was out like cheating on my mom all the time. So then he would come home and there's just glasses breaking, and it was almost like clockwork. He would come home, that would happen, 2, 3 in the morning, he's gone. I have to go downstairs because my mom then drank herself into oblivion because she was so upset. Had to carry her upstairs, put her to bed. And not that happened every single night, but it happened quite a bit, enough that it like leaves a permanent imprint, you know?
Yeah.
And so that, of course, affected the way I interacted with kids at school. And I was already kind of just like this skinny, chubby kid anyway. So I got made fun of a lot, stuffed in lockers, people knocking my books down, stuff like that. And I can remember the names of kids like Ed Richardson and Jeff Scotty and Rick Braun, who used to just pummel me every day and steal my lunch. And it would really upset me when Ed Richardson every day would take my sandwich that my mom made and throw it on the ground and step on it every single day. And like I felt so bad, not because I never had anything to eat, but I was like, oh, my mom made that. I feel so bad. I can't tell her that, you know? And so, but I couldn't fight back. I don't know why. I was just like so weak and insecure. I was like, I couldn't do anything about it.
So what would you do in a situation? He throws your sandwich on the ground. It's not a one-time thing. Like it was a daily thing you said.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to that?
So for a couple years, I was just like, I did nothing. I just sat there and I'd go home and just cry about it, you know, as a kid, and just be bummed out and depressed. And then I would just go home and play with my action figures. But eventually I was like, this can't be anymore. And that was kind of one of the reasons I got into weight training and trying to get bigger and stronger was I got to fight back, and I got to put on this suit of armor so that this doesn't happen as much anymore.
When was the first time you picked up weights?
It was later than it should have been. It was 1986, and so I was 12. But like I was already getting pummeled for a few years. I should have probably gone into it a little sooner. But it was 1986, and I remember that because I remember the Mets were in the World Series that year, and the Giants were in the Super Bowl. And I was like, oh, I want to be like LT and like these guys. And I always grew up watching Saturday morning wrestling with Hulk Hogan, The Ultimate Warrior, and then Schwarzenegger and Stallone on the big screen. So I wanted to be like those guys. So that was kind of like the early impetus for that.
Was it a big box gym, or was it like a weight set at home that you worked?
That was a weight set at home, like with the sand plates.
Yeah. I remember those. I had that. And I also had talked my mom into buying a universal machine at a garage sale, like the cable attachment on one side and a chest press on the other and a leg extension on the other. And that was my first exposure to exercising as well, as far as lifting weights. But I was 17 when I started. So you start this journey of, dad is obviously leaving a very bad imprint of what a man should be in your life.
Yeah.
Right? How does that manifest itself as you go through high school and college in your own personal life?
Well, I was super angry. All through high school and college, I was really angry. I was really rebellious. And I had an awful relationship or no relationship with my dad. And 1988 was my freshman year of high school. I believe that was yours too?
Yep.
And that was the year that It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back by Public Enemy came out, Straight Outta Compton came out, and those were like kind of like the soundtrack to my freshman year of high school, just angry, stomping around, lifting, getting in fights. I was playing basketball at the time, but the only sport that I had potential to be any good in was basketball, and I was actually quite good at basketball, but I had such a temper that I would always get kicked off the team for like almost wanting to choke the coach, like Latrell Sprewell or something. And
I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, no, I know. I just realized where am I going with sports?
Yeah. So look who you're talking to.
But anyway, that was me just during high school, so angry and so rebellious. I didn't want to be friends with anybody. Like I had a small group of friends, which is funny now because that's the exact opposite. Like I'm friends with everybody now. But that was me. That was just anger and frustration for so many years.
The 180-degree pivot that you've made, like I know you as one of the most empathetic and compassionate guys, like period, that I know.
Thank you.
I would say Joel Marion is that way. My vice president of operations at Fit Body Boot Camp, very empathetic and compassionate guy. To hear you say that you were angry and stomping. Now, I know, obviously, one of the stories that I remember you telling me was that you would walk around the house making sure that your feet didn't make any sounds, and you would close a doorknob just so it didn't make it. I mean, you talk about walking on eggshells, right?
Yeah, so I didn't...
Tell me about that.
Yeah. I grew up, with that screaming and all that anger, and I was like, man, I don't want any more of that than I already have to deal with. So I would close the door, like you said, turning the knob all the way and barely letting the wood touch the other side. And I only stopped doing that probably 3 or 4 years ago because Jen would be like, and I would tiptoe. I still tiptoed till probably 3 or 4 years ago. Jen was like, you're still tiptoeing. We're on this other side of the country. That's years behind you. But I would tiptoe around because I didn't want any attention in the house that, God forbid, I did something wrong and the screaming was going to start again and I was going to get in trouble and who knew what was going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy how those things stick with you. And for some people, though, as you know, they just assume if I don't address these things, it'll just evolve and it'll get better in time. By the time I'm in my 40s or 50s, I'll be way better at all these things. No, you won't. You do have to do the work and really go deep.
So what was the work you did to get you so empathetic and compassionate? Because you were truly a connector. You are a lover of humanity. And I don't just say that. Like, this is from firsthand experience of seeing how you connect me with so many great people. And I haven't met a person that you've connected me to that I would say is questionable. How does that happen? You go from so much anger and isolation to now being such a great connector, compassionate and empathetic.
Yeah. So, well, I will say this first. it's not that I wasn't empathetic and compassionate growing up. I was, and even though I said that stuff about my mom, like my mom still instilled that in me. Like she marched with Dr. King and was like a hippie and stuff like that. So I always was really concerned with all the stuff that I am now.
Yeah.
I just had so much anger, kind of like, masking all that. But the first step was I became aware. Like you have that unconscious incompetence, and you don't know what you don't know. And I became aware, like, what am I doing? Like I just had this awakening one day in my late 20s, early 30s. I got to start to make some changes. It was probably more early 30s. And I decided, I heard Henry Rollins talk about, if you want to reinvent yourself, you should always reinvent yourself, but get out of the town where you grew up in, where everybody knows you, where everybody judges you, and environment triggers behaviors. You got to move and go somewhere else. And so I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. I need to move to the other side of the country and start anew, create a whole new identity.
Was that the biggest deciding factor for the move for you and Jen?
Yes.
From New Jersey to Southern California?
Yeah, for sure. Because I just, over the course of a couple of years, identified all these things where I wasn't aware of it. And then once I became aware of it, I was like, oh, that guy talks negative all the time. That guy's always complaining. That guy's it must be nice guy, And I was like, I don't want to hear any of that anymore. And so I was like, let me get away from all that. Let me go to the other side of the country, try to reinvent myself. And then it was just a string of all these different books, seeking out the right kind of people that I want to be around, and putting myself in those situations, which so many people are like, oh, I wish I had the people that you have around you. And you probably heard the same thing. It's like, they didn't come to my living room and knock on my front door. Like I went to meet you in Denver with Craig, and I go places. Like you have to do that kind of stuff. So it was, slowly cutting out the other deadbeat kind of people and putting myself around the people like you and like that I want to be around, reading those kind of books and putting stuff on the back burner. So at that point I was like, okay, I know enough about training. I've read about training obsessively, at least 2 hours a day for 20 years. I could put that on the back burner. I could put the business books on the back burner. Let me just read about personal development and mindset and stuff like that, and continually push myself and whatever was making me uncomfortable, all the things that I couldn't do for the first 30 plus years of my life. Now let me start to work on that and track PRs on that like I would in the gym. Like how many people can I engage in a day? How many people can I give a compliment to? Just continually pushing myself to get better.
Part of your big evolution was reading books. What would you say the top 2-3 books were that you read that gave you those aha moments where you can pivot?
I really love The Art of Living, which I know Craig's a big fan of that. Epictetus. The Tao Te Ching. How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, I could list 20, but those would stand out for sure.
Okay. Would you agree that reading the books alone make you an information gatherer, but taking action on it really delivers the results?
100%.
What would you say the first thing was that you started to actually act on that you learned from a book?
I think it was just, I read How to Win Friends and Influence People when I was younger, but it was like, I don't know, I just read it and I was like, yeah, whatever. That doesn't matter. It doesn't make sense. So I think it was just nowadays, whenever I read one of those books like that, I immediately take action and teach it immediately. So, and not even in a formal setting, I just make sure to share it with somebody because then it makes the lesson stick, and I put it into action in some way. Do something the next day. Teach, even if it's just me and you having coffee. I'm like, hey, here's what I think about this and this is what I learned. Like, taking that action makes a big difference, I think. And I did become guilty of becoming an info collector for sure. I was reading countless books. Yeah. Like now, I'll maybe read 3 to 4 books a month, but I was on a streak where I was reading 2 books every week. And then I was like, well, there's no possible way you could physically comprehend all that.
For 12 years, you spent an average of 12 hours a day in the gym. If there was one single thing that you would point out, would you say that that's what made you one of the world's best strength coaches, or is there something else?
So many people have a lot of experience, as much or more, I think it's just, I do have, when I get really into something, almost an OCD attention to detail.
You lock on.
I do. Yeah. So I think that's it. Like, for example, recently I was speaking to a bunch of young trainers and strength coaches, and they wanted to know how to grow their business and stuff like that. And I was like, A, go to B instead of me. But I said to them on the spot, I said, okay, who in this room can tell me the latest 2018 studies on hypertrophy with volume, frequency, intensity? Nobody. How do I know that? And I've been doing this for 25 years and I'm pretty successful. And none of you guys know that? Step up your game. Okay, so to this day, I'm still obsessed with that. I still want to know and show people, hey, the role of the big toe in the squat? No, nobody knows that, but I'll show you that. Like, I'm obsessed with this stuff to this day. Just like you're obsessed with what you do. To be the best, you have to be obsessed. So I think that's what it is.
Do you think that people who aren't the best get that way because they stop learning, they stop seeking? I mean, why is it that you've been doing this 25 years and you know stuff that these young, hungry trainers and coaches should know?
I think it's two things. And I think you would agree, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but people don't practice mastery and focus on one thing, right? So I think these new trainers, they're also trying to run a mastermind like you and try to do this and try to do 5 other things.
Great social media status.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where all I did was get up and go to the gym. And to this day, even if I have better things that I should be doing, I'm still so obsessed. I want to know more about ankle mobility and how it could help this guy. So I block out that time every day to be the best, to have that Zen kind of focus on mastery.
What does your morning routine look like, Jay?
My morning routine is I get up, I read a passage from either the Tao or from Epictetus, and then I read. This is kind of new over the last 3 months. I read for 30 minutes. I used to go right to work on my most important task, but I'll read because I found that if at the end of the day I haven't read for at least 20 minutes, I'll block off that 20 minutes to read. I get frustrated with myself and down, like I let myself down. It's weird, but so I block off. I do that, and then I'll have some kind of task that I have to do on the computer for about a half hour. Oddly enough, I can't spend a lot of time on the computer at all anymore. Part of that is due to I spent a lot of time on the computer building my online business. Part of it is I feel like I get better in social interactions every single day. And so my confidence grows even more, and I just want to be out and coaching and doing stuff. So it's hard for me. Because it's funny, because you know as well as anyone that you could spend an hour, hit send, and you know how much money you're going to make. Right. But it's just hard for me. I love this life that I have now where I get to go around and do all this kind of stuff. So I sacrifice some of that time.
And speaking of coaching, you're coming off a weekend here where you had so many of your students in town coaching them. And these aren't strength coaches. These aren't people that you're passing your wisdom down to.
Right.
Tell me about the students that you're helping and why you chose them.
So it's been when I used to own the gym, I used to do training only workshops. And then when we moved to Cali, I didn't have a gym, so I didn't do any live events for 3 years. And then I said, you know what I really want to do is incorporate all this, kind of like what we're talking about here on the show, is like the mental strength, the physical strength, the emotional strength. How do I tie that into all one weekend? Because I see what a difference it's made in my life. So we just created these kind of unique events, and we get guys together. It's men only, which is really unique these days, and it's just like tribal bonding. We break down the walls. Mike and I, who run them together, DeSanti, you know, we've just developed this rapport over the last 4 or 5 years of doing them, where we instantly get people to drop their walls and their barriers and share stuff in that tribal community. And like we've had people share things they haven't had about child being abused as a child, or stuff, Navy SEALs crying. It's like crazy. But that comes when you're in that little group and you're willing to be vulnerable. And then we ask serious questions that people don't ask themselves. You know, it's not like we came up with these incredibly unique questions. It's just we ask them and we're like, oh, no one's ever asked me that. I never thought of that. So, and then I think the way we sequence the weekend, the bonding happens because we do a really brutally hard workout on the beach, and then people are ready to they bonded together. Then they share. We do. There's a lot of physical activity. There's a lot of training. There's a lot of deep kind of work, and people come out of those weekends transformed. Almost every time. Every single person is like, that's one of the greatest weekends I've ever had, one of the most valuable, one of the most transformative.
A breakthrough moment.
Yeah.
Do you think, and I don't know this to be true, so I certainly don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you think that a group of people suffering for a period of time creates a bond that can almost be considered unbreakable?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and is that what you try and create?
Yes.
When you say we start off with a really intense workout, I'm guessing you partner them up, or how does it?
Yeah. Throughout the weekend, we'll do stuff that makes them uncomfortable. We'll take some stuff from Navy SEALs, some just training stuff, making people uncomfortable. Something as simple as just staring each other in the eyes until you break. And like people will cry during that. It's crazy the things that'll happen.
That's nice.
And walking people through minefields blindfolded, so you have to trust your partner telling you where to go. Some of it's just crazy intense workouts. Some of it's hard hikes, and most of the stuff, the workout stuff, a lot of it is competition based. So guys are partnered up, they're teamed up, and then you see how they react. A lot of the things we don't give them the rules. We give them about 80% of the rules, and then we see who's going to step up, who's going to be a leader, who's going to get to the top, but then go back and bring their other guys up. And it's very interesting, very telling. And then when we point that out later, yeah, it was an individual race, because we'll tell them it's an individual and team race, and here's how it works. So sometimes the individual guy will celebrate at the top, and I'm like, no, you didn't win, but I don't say anything. And then later we're like, did you see how you did that? That's how you show up for your wife. That's how you show up at work. That's how you show up for your employees or your team members. And guys will cry like, Jesus, no, I never thought of that way, you know?
Huge.
Yeah.
What does any of this benefit you? Not financially. Obviously, there's a financial benefit. It's a business and it's a passion project. But how much of this is also helping Jay, who comes from a divorced family, an angry father? Because I know for me, every time I'm coaching people in their mindset and their business, it's because I suffered in business and I had a very broken mindset. And so it's a constant reminder of what I need to do. Do you get the same experience?
100%. Yeah. I think I remember you and I driving around one time, and I don't know if I'm quoting you 100% correctly, but you said you coach what you need the most or something like that. Something like that. Yeah, totally. So I get A, because you always learn from coaching, and B, it's just like it forces me to step up. So sometimes at the end of the weekend, if a guy's pushed himself that much out of his comfort zone and shared that much and had that much of a thing, of a change, of a breakthrough, I'm like, wow, I got to step up this week. So I leave just as motivated on Monday morning as they are, you know? And it's cathartic in a way sometimes, because I'm helping people get through what I struggled with so much. So you definitely feel better. It's for me too, for sure. Yeah.
I always tell people around me that the level of coaching and mentoring that I do is probably the most selfish thing that I do for myself. Yeah. It truly is. Like, I feel like I should be paying my clients.
Right.
As they're getting breakthroughs, I'm reminded of what I need to keep doing, to keep having the breakthrough.
Every time I have something that I think is a really good piece of advice for someone, I say, oh man, I got to do that. I totally forgot about that. Yeah.
So earlier off camera, you were telling me that like you really went back to what your passion and purpose is.
Yeah.
And ironically, there was a time, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, where we were eating, drinking, and possibly taking some kind of edible medicinal.
I can't imagine.
medicinal marijuana. I'm sure it was legally prescribed to you that you shared with me. And I remember you telling me that you're just so tired of talking about the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And so you did this pivot, but now you're pivoting back to your passion. What happened there? Was that a midlife crisis? What was going on?
I don't really know what it was. I think it was, I had written over 1,000 articles on training, and I had done so many things that I wanted to accomplish in the industry. And I was like, okay. And I've seen plenty of people kind of go through that, where they get bored for a little bit and they think they want to do other things. So you try other stuff. I think sometimes you need to try other stuff to lead you back to your true passion and purpose.
Yep.
And some of it was not having a gym anymore, not having my environment. But then, as you know, more than anybody, when you start trying to do too many things, then you get really frustrated and stressed out. So I was doing like personal development stuff, and then I didn't want to, but I was getting suckered into doing a lot of business coaching, just because, like, when guys would come to events or join our higher end coaching program, I couldn't hide the fact that I'd built a successful gym, a successful online business, a successful podcast. So they would ask me, and then all of a sudden I'm doing lots of that, but I don't want to do that. I want you to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so this is a perfect follow-up to your last question. When we had done the last few events, we get people to dial in on what their main thing is, what their purpose is. If you had a gun in your head, what would be the only thing you do? And every time I was like, man, it would just be training. It would just be training. Every time I was like, when I'm doing the exercises with them, it'd be strength and conditioning. And especially now, so I really have a passion for 40-year-old or even guys late in their career, whether they're 35, like extending their careers. Like yesterday I was working with two guys who were in their late 30s and have been wrestling for a long time. And they were talking about, he actually said to me, I want a program that's not powerlifting, not CrossFit, not Olympic lifting, not bodybuilding, but something that will enhance my longevity, make me look good, but still move well and perform well. And I was like, well, your savior's arrived. That's what I love doing now, you know? So I love.
Have you met me?
Yeah. So I've really had a renewed passion for that. And then I think I thought mistakenly, well, I wrote 1,000+ articles. Everyone's read my stuff. There's nothing left for me to say. But there's, of course, millions of people who have never heard anything I've had to say, never read those articles. And when it comes down to it, there's so much new science all the time. There's always something new to learn. And so that's what I love more than anything. So it's been really fun this year to get back to just focusing on that.
Good for you. What's changed in your personal training, in your personal diet now that you're in your early 40s?
It's more focused. Everything's more focused on health and longevity. Like, it's funny, I was with the New York Giants strength coach the other day, and we were talking about all this stuff, and he's the same age as us. He's 44, and he was saying the same thing. He's more focused on that now. Like, he could be 20 pounds bigger, I could be 20 pounds bigger, but what's the sacrifice on your joints and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And so it's safer training in every way possible. The warm-ups, and I'm really, really dialed in on precision and mastery of execution. Like, with anyone I'm working with or myself, it's got to be pristine technique, got to be perfect. So things like that. I do a little bit more frequency, so I'll train full body like 3 to 5 times a week. And I find that
that's different from the meathead training you were doing, the splits, right? Back in the day.
But so what happens is, like, let's say you're going to do 15 sets for chest on Monday. Or you could do 3 sets 5 days a week, or 5 sets 3 days a week. Your joints tend to handle it a little bit better. Now,
but are the results the same?
That's the thing. If you wanted to get massive and compete in bodybuilding, I don't know. There's something to the pump, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So there's a little bit of a trade-off for sure. But the trade-off for me of feeling better, being able to perform better, because the thing is too, like, if I'm looking at everybody I work with as an athlete, and if I want to be able to surf or play a game of hoops that breaks out, whatever happens, I never want to be sore. So training has to be scheduled in a way that it doesn't cause soreness, it doesn't cause a lot of central nervous system fatigue, overall systemic fatigue, any kind of decrease in movement capacity. So if I'm doing like an RDL once a week for 5 sets, I'm probably going to be sore that whole time. But if I do a hip hinge pattern 3 to 4 days a week, I'll never get sore because my body gets used to it. So then I can sprint, hike, do whatever all the time. So I like training people like there'd be a Navy SEAL or James Bond type of guy or a pro wrestler where they always have to be ready. I like the always ready kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's basically, and then I don't do a lot of big barbell stuff anymore. It's a lot of body weights, a lot of dumbbells, kettlebells, but I'll still go heavy. Like I'll use a pair of 100-pound dumbbells and do a single leg RDL, which is pretty friggin' hard.
Right.
Yeah.
No joke, man. What about your eating? Your eating's completely changed because you used to be like a human vacuum.
Yeah.
And you've really dialed it in and leaned out. And what has changed? And if someone wants to they want performance, but they want aesthetics, and they want to feel better.
Yeah.
Don't want to be foggy-headed.
Yep.
How should they be eating?
So that's the main thing for me too, is as I get older, it's looking good, obviously, being lean, but inflammation and brain health is huge as we get older. And all of the science and research on brain health, and Alzheimer's is in my family. So it's all pointing towards higher fat, lower carb, which isn't always the best for performance, but you can strategically use carbs to recover and boost your performance. So I've moved away from a higher carb diet to more of a lower carb. So basically, and I've really limited the amount of foods I eat. I think it's overhyped that you need a ton of variety because then you never really know what foods are working for your body. And a lot of people that I respect have come to that same conclusion over the last year or so. Ben Pekulski, a mutual friend, has been saying the same thing. So I'll basically eat grass-fed wild meats, blueberries, leafy greens, avocado, sweet potatoes, dark chocolate. Those are my go-tos. And coffee. That's basically what I consume every single day.
Wow.
Of course, sometimes I'll have some stuff that's not on that list and, occasionally go off the rails and eat 18 desserts, as you've seen me do.
That's typically on a Sunday still, right?
Yeah. Not anywhere as frequently.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
A little bit less often, yeah.
No kidding.
Just because, again, I know how I'm going to feel on Monday and Tuesday, and I know how important it is for my cognitive function, which was never great for my whole life anyway, to be dialed in. And just the inflammation. Like if I eat a bunch of junk and I train the next day, I'm like, my elbows are a little creaky, my shoulders are a little creaky, my knees. I don't really want that. It's fun once in a while to share. Like if I haven't seen you or Luca in a while, we're out, we're having a good time. Like there's still something to be said about having good times and breaking bread with friends and having that experience. But I do it less.
And let me be a little selfish here and ask, because I kind of always see myself as my audience as well. Alcohol. In my 40s, I'm metabolizing it poorly, but man, I could have 2 cocktails and I'll wake up foggy-headed tomorrow morning, whereas in my late 20s, early 30s, it would take a few to wake up relatively foggy.
Yeah.
What's happening with my body? How should I be drinking alcohol? Is there any room for alcohol in someone's diet who's trying to stay functional and cognitively healthy?
Yeah, I mean that's a challenge, and that's me. That's everyone I know that's our age. Just the older you get, the worse it gets. So I have found that, and like so many people that I know and respect and are focused on longevity and health, I've traded in an occasional edible for alcohol, and I feel so much better because then I have an amazing sleep. I wake up with no hangover. I feel great. I really don't drink that much anymore. I'll drink maybe once a month. I'll have 2 drinks, and I will feel fine. But if I have more than that, like, 10 years ago, I could have 12 drinks and wake up and run a marathon. But now that's not happening. I'm crushed for 2 days.
Yeah. Understood. So today, what is your purpose with your Renegade radio show? Because I get lots of value from it. I get entertainment from it. But how do you use it? Do you use it to grow your brand, your business? Do you do this to give back? Like, what's the purpose of the show?
I think it's all of the above. I love it. One of the reasons I started it was because I was early in that journey of being insecure, and I was like, well, up until a few years ago, what a lot of people don't know is my online business was basically built on blogging till about, 5 years ago, till I started the podcast. Like, you never really saw pictures of me or videos of me or even heard me because I didn't like the sound of my voice or like the way I looked, or, well, I'm not as jacked as Joe DeFranco or Jim.
Really? Those were the reasons why?
Yes.
Because well before I ever met you face to face and Craig introduced us, you're right. I was a fanatical reader of your blog posts. You're an amazing writer.
Thank you.
You can draw pictures with words. You can draw pictures with words like so clearly. I never knew the reason why. So you felt like you weren't big enough. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't like the sound of my
I never even
voice.
told people that until
Get
probably
outta
earlier
here.
this year. I was kind of hiding behind the screen, which was weird because if you came to my gym, you'd see me completely confident with 20 athletes and guys
Sure.
around me. But I said, to put myself out there on the internet, I'm too insecure for that. People are going to be judging me. I'm not big enough and jacked enough, So I pushed myself just to get behind a mic and start doing that. That was, like you said, a lot of it's selfish. The reason for the podcast is let me challenge myself to get behind a mic and then get in front of a camera and do this stuff. To now, it's comfortable enough for me that you said we're going to Staples Center. You're going to get on stage. It's like, oh, let's go. I'll be there in 2 seconds. Like, but that took a lot of work.
Yeah.
It took a lot of work.
You want to hear something funny?
I do.
Talking about taking a lot of work. You started doing improv.
Yeah.
Classes. Are they called classes?
Yeah.
Okay. You started doing improv classes, and then you hornswoggled me into doing an improv class with you. And I don't know if you remember this, but one of the shticks that the instructor had us do was, it was like 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and it had words written on it. Some of it was like,
Was it like famous speeches?
yeah, like from Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, fucking a general from World War II.
Right.
And I had no idea. I don't know. For improv, I thought we'd be role playing goofy stuff, and all of a sudden, remember, he had us reading off those things.
And you had to change the emotion
Yes.
from what he shouted out. Like
Exactly.
Angry, sad,
Yeah.
delirious, whatever.
Well, what I didn't tell you was that was the scariest moment of my life when that happened, and this was only a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
And I know it was off of 3rd Street Promenade, because I remember hating that as we left. We couldn't leave that fucking place fast enough. And I'll tell
I
you why.
remember how stressed out
Yeah.
you were before.
And the reason for that is, when I came to America, English is a second language for me. Around 3rd grade, the teacher starts having you do these things where we're all reading from a book, right? All right, we're all going to stand up. Now, Jay, you read the next 2 paragraphs. All right, Bedros, it's your turn. Read the next 2 paragraphs out loud. I was a horrible out loud reader in 3rd grade. And I had since then, obviously, I've grown up. English is my primary language. I can read to myself just fine, dude. Like I burn through books big time. But I guess since then, I'd never read out loud. And in that moment, like 30 years later, you put me in a fucking situation where I'm having to read out loud.
Holy crap.
And I was choking.
Yeah.
And I hated the entire experience. But here's where the funny thing is.
I had no idea.
Forced myself to go through it in that moment because I was like, fuck, I'm just going to say, hey, man, I don't want to do this, and just bounce. Like, I don't have to see those people ever again.
Yeah.
Right? But in my head, I had a quick talk with myself, just shut the fuck up and go through it. And thank God I did, because 2 years later, which was just about 4 months ago, I'm recording my audiobook for Man Up. And up until that point, I had convinced myself that I was going to have someone else read it, right? I was going to hire a professional to read it. And when I read Man Up, I felt like a champ. The first day was a little rough, but I felt like a champ. And thank God you had me do that improv scenario, because had I not forced myself to accept the fact I'm going to have to read out loud and get comfortable with it, I would not have gotten comfortable with reading my audiobook. And every day people DM me and send me messages, thank you for reading your own book. It makes the book so much more real when you're reading it.
Wow, amazing.
But I had no idea that I couldn't read out loud until that very moment in that improv class. I think Rich, your friend Rich, which interestingly I brought him to FBS. Thank you for that. And he did a great shtick on stage at FBS, and I brought him to my headquarters, and he did a whole role play with my team about communication, etc. But that was probably the most terrifying moment of my adult life. And I'm like, all I wanted to do was hang out with my friend Jay, and he put me in this most uncomfortable position. So anyway, that just kind of flashed to me. But it flashed because here you are saying like how you hated the idea of putting yourself in public. And so you were hiding behind the screen, writing blogs. And I didn't know that I hated reading out loud as an adult because I hadn't done it for so long. And in that moment, I figured it out, but I couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And, you helped me break through. So thank you for that.
Wow. And it's so powerful. There's a million reasons why I love you like a brother, but you're always willing to take those risks. And I've been in those situations, like when we went rock climbing together. You're always willing to do that. So that makes me want to push myself, step out of my comfort zone. And then for you to share it, like even though I've heard almost all the stories in the book, when I was reading the book, I had goosebumps countless times, and it really gave me hope and inspiration, because there's certainly stuff that I'm struggling with all the time. And to see you say like, dude, this was just like 2 or 3 years ago. And I was like, man, we were hanging out during that time. I didn't even know that until maybe you told me 6 months later or a year later. But like, it's so powerful for you in your position to share that kind of stuff. So it's really cool.
So let's say that you meet someone, maybe in a gym environment like this, maybe at an event that you're speaking at, but you're never going to see that someone again. And he comes up to you or she comes up to you and says, look, I live in fear. I live in self-doubt. I feel like an imposter. I sometimes feel like a hypocrite. I know I'm destined for more. What is the one message you would impart with this person who lives in this state of fear and self-doubt and maybe like a hypocrite or feels like an imposter, who you're never going to see again? Is there a message that you would give them, knowing that that one message will set them right if they just act on it?
Well, it's really selfish to live like that. And I wish I didn't live like that for so long, because everybody has a gift. So, and if you know what your gift is, so if you came up to me and said, hey, my gift is this, but I'm so nervous and insecure, I would say, well, let's think of it as a physical gift. Like if I knew you wanted, like if I had this iPod or whatever, the best gift would be for Bedros, and I had this here, but I never gave it to you, that would be the worst thing ever. So if you have this amazing gift and just take it and throw it in the trash and just keep it at home, it's really selfish. Like if you can help all these people with your gift, you owe it to the world to do that. And I get not everybody wants fame and celebrity and to have 1 million followers and stuff like that, but you have to help. Like we all have to pay it forward. You have to do something. You have to share your story. You have to share your gift, and know that no one is judging you as much as they think. Everybody wants you to succeed. I think we have this negative connotation that we just see, negative, hateful comments on YouTube. That represents this much of the population. Most people want you to succeed, especially if you're in their shoes and you're in their boat, you're insecure. Dude, we're all insecure. So if you can get up on stage and do something, that inspires me. Nobody's rooting for you to fail. So it's all in your head. People aren't thinking those negative thoughts that you think they are. It's just you.
What have I not asked that I should have asked you that would benefit our audience?
What a good question. You may have stumped me on this one. I'm drawing a blank.
Then let me ask you another question. What do I not know about Jay Ferruggia that would maybe surprise me?
Man, I don't know. I'm a pretty open book. I share everything with you. What do you not know? I mean, I'm a big fan of female pop music, but I think you know that. I did Taylor Swift.
You sing along, yeah.
What else? I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I still have self-doubt every day. I still have fear every day. And I talk to a lot of people, our friends that we were talking about off the air, that are in some of the highest positions in the world, on TV all the time. They all have the self-doubt all the time. The difference between people who succeed and they don't is they just step into that fear and they walk through the door. It's going to suck. There's stories about people who take the stage, famous musicians, famous performers that throw up every time before they go out, or they get butterflies, or they get sick, and they do it every single time. Professional athletes get nervous. Fighters get nervous as could be. They think it might be the end of, that's why they kiss their wives before they go into the ring. But they face that fear. Like, I'm not immune to that. Every day I have self-doubt. And if I spend too much time alone, I'll pick myself apart and say, I should have done this better. I should have done that better. This guy's better than me. That guy's better than me. But I identify that behavior and know what I have to do to get out of it.
How do you shut that voice down? That inner voice that beats you up. How do you shut that down?
So I used to always think, okay, I'm introverted. I need a bunch of time alone. But what I noticed over time was I was writing that narrative and telling myself that story. And time alone, I think for anyone, because we're social creatures, tribally, we would have evolved to live in groups of 30 to 40 people. We would have never been alone. So you, me, everyone here, we would have hunted. We would have built shelters together. We would have slept together low to the ground, all really close. You're never alone. If you were alone, it was because you were ostracized from the tribe. In the animal kingdom, animals are never alone. If they're left alone, it's because they become injured, they broke their leg, and they're left behind to die. So it's unnatural for humans to be alone. And sometimes guys will come to my events and say, oh, I love spending time alone. I could be happy on the top of a mountain. And I'll look them dead in the eye and say, 100% incorrect. That's not true. And they're saying, what, am I lying? I'm saying, no, you're not lying. You're just wrong. You're dead wrong, and I'm right. Trust me. That's not natural. So when I start to spend too much time alone, I'll do the same thing that any human being would do, and it's not good. So I just get around people. I'll call you. Let's hang out. And there's been times where I've been bummed out, and I'll call you, and you'll drop everything, like my brother, and be like, yo, let's go hang out. Let's get a drink or whatever. And there's people that I could do. Or it might just be as simple as, let me just go out and grab coffee with somebody. Let me go surfing. Let me go for a walk. Let me just get out of this space. I know that I'm starting to go down that path. I got to do something to get out of it. The thing now is I can get out of it in 5 minutes. 5 years ago, it might have taken me 5 weeks. 10 years ago, it might have taken me 5 months. So you just have to identify it and get better and just make small incremental progress over time.
Huge. That was huge. And there's no better place to stop. You ready to crush the weight room?
Yes.
Let's rock.